Questions? Mr. Patterson?
Hi.
I first of all want to let you know how that I do appreciate the candor and the effort here. This is, in my judgment, a business plan that certainly tries to get closer to what a real business plan is about, and I appreciate the fact that over the last several weeks, there in other hearings and things, there has been a real clear understanding of the difficulty that is facing us. So I'm going to explore just a couple of things. One, can you tell me what the initial operating segment it will go from where to where?
Our first full service would be Bakersfield to San Francisco under the Valley to Valley service. That'd be our first full system. However, we don't have full funding for that right now, and so we are taking an approach that's common for other transit entities around the country and state. We are going to move forward in an incremental way. And so the first is, as you know, we're in the middle of a 119-mile stretch that we have construction contracts underway for in the Central Valley, and we have an agreement with the federal government that we get operations out of those assets once they're built. So we are proposing in the business plan to incrementally get to the Valley to Valley service, and in the meantime we would build in a way, as we have outlined in prior plans, to provide some mobility benefit with the segments that we build. So the first on the Central Valley side is a Bakersfield to Madera stretch connecting with the Amtrak service going north to Sacramento and west to the Bay Area. And on the Silicon Valley side, we are already partners in the electrification of the project from San Jose to San Francisco, and we are proposing to extend that further south to Gilroy. So we'd have an electrified section, about 224 miles in total of electrified service on two ends, and we still propose to get isolate the tunnel as the last piece to complete Valley to Valley.
Right. So we have essentially an initial operating segment that is disconnected. I mean, it basically runs from outside Madera, I guess, to outside Bakersfield, and that will be an operation. What will run on those tracks?
Yeah, we have now engaged an early train operator that we are talking to now about how best to put that service in place. But the proposal here is to go all the way to Bakersfield in the south end, and in the north either Madera or Merced, likely Madera, and connect there with the Amtrak system that goes further north to Sacramento and west to the Bay Area. That is an incremental use that we are examining. We want to look at whether or not we can do that with electrified high-speed trains initially, or whether we have to allow the assets to be used directly by Amtrak. And that's something that we are analyzing in real time. And I had indicated in a prior hearing we'd be reporting back to the legislature at our project update report in March.
What the language in the plan in describing high-speed, the initial operating segment has changed. The language to describe it used to be high-speed rail. Mm-hmm. This business plan describes it as high-speed rail ready. What's the difference between the two?
Well, ultimately, we will have a system that is entirely a high-speed rail system connecting Bakersfield and San Francisco. As we've indicated in the plan and in prior hearings, we don't have the full funding for that at this time. So similar to what this project has never had full funding for all of its operations, and so we are proposing to build it in incremental stages. The first is meet our federal commitment in the Central Valley to get some operational use out of the assets we're building there. We want to examine, and I want to examine, whether high-speed electrified trains could be initially used there to cut down the travel times now on what is otherwise the Amtrak service. And on the west side, we want to extend the electrification of Caltrain from San Francisco to San Jose all the way to Gilroy. That will mean that Caltrain will no longer have to use diesel trains from Gilroy going north, and the whole system would be electrified. It would be ready for us, and we are examining whether we can put high-speed electrified service in there as an interim basis as early as 2026 or 2027. So that's what's in the plan. We're doing the analysis now, and we will report back to the legislature and the public on how we can put that into play in March of 2019.
That initial operating segment will run trains of some kind back and forth between Madera and Bakersfield.
Yeah, and that's a requirement we have with our federal grant agreement today.
Yeah.
That we put that,
And
we put those assets into use.
You cannot say today that they will be high-speed trains. They may very well be slow-speed trains.
Our assets initially are going, our assets for the entire Valley to Valley will be full high-speed train service once we complete all of the system, including the tunneling between the Pacheco Pass. That stretch in the Central Valley and going west will travel in excess of 200 miles per hour. When we get to the Silicon Valley, we'll travel at speeds of roughly 110 miles per hour in that corridor. So that's the system that we ultimately will build. We don't have all the funding in hand for that right now. We likely have a funding gap that is about the cost of the tunnels for that. In the interim, we do want to provide mobility benefits where we can. And if we can put electrified service in the Central Valley sooner, connecting with Amtrak, we think we reduce the Amtrak travel time by 90 minutes and may be able to reduce the state subsidy for that system. That analysis is underway now, and we'll come back with a project update report for all of you.
You do recognize the size and the difficult nature of attaining the gap funding for the tunnels.
I do. And one of the reasons that I want to isolate it on the tunnels, I think, my view is once you have some services running on either side, the tunnel becomes an obvious element in connecting the two. By focusing on the tunnel and bringing in some expertise on innovative ways to fund it and engaging our federal partners going forward, I think we can, I'm confident we'll find a way to get there on a specific asset that will have obvious mobility benefits.
With the electrification from Gilroy to San Jose, that's along Union Pacific lines.
Correct.
Do you have permission for that purpose?
As we indicated in the plan, we are currently in talks with UP.
How would you describe those talks?
Positive.
So you think that Union Pacific will eventually agree to allow you access?
Look, I don't know if they're in the room. It's a negotiation, and we are talking about that. And what we would do is use that right away to electrify 2 tracks that are for passenger rail and maintain a freight track for their use in the right of way. It is the least impactful way to get into that section that ultimately we will need. And we continue to work with them in good faith on trying to get that done.
Your business plan anticipates a rather, I think, dubious approach to the financing, which is the cap and trade. It requires extensions and the like. And our Legislative Analyst Office has said that a complete and viable funding plan does not exist. Funding it in the business plan seems to rely on extending cap and trade. From your business plan, you're suggesting to prohibit the legislature from restricting, redistributing, or impairing the authority's cap and trade for 30 years, extension of the cap and trade program through 2050, and guarantee that the legislature will backfill any shortfall if cap and trade auctions bring in less revenue. Are you aware that that kind of a plan is going to require a vote of the people?
I think that's an open question right now. I want to say this about the cap and trade program. In the 2016 business plan, there was an assumption of cap and trade revenue all the way to 2050, and we indicated that for building a mega project of this size, you want to be able to finance any revenue stream so that you can match revenues with your capital costs as you're building. If we don't have some kind of a financing capacity against the revenue streams dedicated to the project, it will be difficult to stay on schedule. And so just as we said in 2016, we want to try to be able to bring forward some of the dollars that are otherwise continuously appropriated to this project through the cap and trade mechanism. And so industry had given us, here are 3 things you look for the highest investment grade investment grade status of a financing, you want to have non-impairment, you want to have a commitment to 2050, and you want to have a floor of funding. I candidly don't know if we can get all those things, but it's not a go or no go. We need authority to finance against it. We need it to be as strong as it could be, that commitment to make sure we can do the financing. However strong it is in statute and articulated in the law, we will get, it will reflect our risk or cost of capital. So with these three elements, we'd have the very cheapest cost of capital. With elements that are, shades of gray on it, the cost of capital might go higher. But we would still, there's large sort of swings in what you need to do basic financing. Well, our point is we need to finance the revenue stream to bring the dollars forward to meet the capital costs at the time we have them to build the project. And that was something we said in 2016, and it's something we're repeating in 2018.
Well, again, I really do want to focus. You have made some specific contingencies in the plan to access cap and trade. And our legislative council has advised us that only a vote of the people can require a future legislature to commit funds or prohibit a future legislature from changing an appropriation. Mm-hmm. Are you aware and do you concur that what is in your business plan requires a vote of the people?
I don't necessarily concur with that yet, because I don't know that to be true against the cap and trade revenue stream. I think we now have a continuous appropriation. If we are given legislative authority to revenue bond off that appropriation, but we can't do the impairment, we'd still go forward with trying to finance this. Maybe without the impairment, and maybe it means that we don't have as high a rated financing structure as possible. But a continuous appropriation is pretty good, which we already have. An authority to issue revenue bonds off of that stream is helpful. It would be useful to have some floor of a commitment in there. Under the law today, as a continuously appropriated matter, we have 25%. If there's a floor that's tied to that, it would help us finance against that revenue stream.
Well, for this member, it seems pretty cut and dried that what you're proposing in the business plan is going to require a vote of the people. If it becomes evident that in order to actualize the business plan, would you be going to a vote of the people? Is that an option as you consider at least the business plan in front of us, which I think does actually require at least a change in the state constitution? So I think there's got to be some kind of vote of the people here to let you do what you are planning to do.
What we put in the business plan, and as we couched the three things you need for the highest investment grade financing, we outlined what the industry gave us as these are the three things you need. I look at it having come from the legislature and look at it and say, okay, those are three things that the industry point out as the best things you need for an investment grade rating. I don't know that you can get all those things, but I do think you can still finance with less. And what we said in the plan is we'd work with the Department of Finance and the legislature on exactly what the financing authority looks like to go forward. So I don't have a plan right now to go to the vote of the people. I'm not sure we need to go to the vote of the people. We'll look at that, and we will work with the legislature on how we can best define how we can finance against the revenue stream already committed to the project. And our hope is to get some kind of financing so that we can make sure we can deliver the project and the elements of the project sooner rather than later. That's the number one need or push for the financing, is just to make sure we can meet capital costs sooner.
And again, Legislative Council has opined on this, and I think that's a significant opinion, and I think it needs to be paid attention to.
And before you respond, we've now kind of gone through this discussion several times, so I think we get it.
Finally, I'm generally concerned about what is Plan B. On the surface of it, this does not look like it's going to get completed. I know you are optimistic and you want to be innovative and all of that, but economic gravity is really kicking in here, and I want to know if there is a Plan B. What happens if you just simply cannot build the entire system? Are you considering a Plan B? Is there a contingency plan of some kind?
Well, Mr. Patterson, I guess I'd say that's going to be a conversation that's broader than just us. It's going to involve the legislature and us going forward. I've stepped into this, and I know what I have, and I know that it's short of what we need, and the project has always been in that condition since the day the voters approved the original bonds. They've never had all the money they need to go. And so the authority adopted a principle that said, with the funding we have, we will build incrementally to provide benefits early, hopefully linking all of the investments we make for the full system. And that, I think, is the appropriate way to go when you don't have every dollar you need for the full system. So I'm proposing a business plan based on what I know we have, and I know we have to do work with our federal partners, we have to continue to do work with the private sector, and we have to continue to do work with all of you to ensure that we can keep building the system. I took this job and I do this because I think it's an important project for the future of the state. I'm not espousing a plan B right now because I want to move forward on what we have, and I want to show that we can deliver and perform. And as we do that, I think incrementally we can build the system.
My understanding is that the authority has completed a contingency plan document for early service operations of the first construction section, that was required by the Federal Railroad Administration as part of the cooperative agreement with them for grant funding, page 51 of the FRA document. Are you aware of a contingent plan document that was submitted to FRA in 2016? And if so, we think that there's ample evidence that there is a contingency plan there. I think this committee ought to be able to see it, and I would like to see it as well.
If it's what I think you're referencing, I believe it's available on our website, and if it's not available on our website, I'm happy to make it available to you. There is a requirement that, as I said at the outset, that with the respect to the federal money we're using in the Central Valley, we have to apply and provide them with a plan of operation for the assets we build. And we did provide that in October of 2016. I think it's available on our website. If it's not, we'll make it available to the committee right away.
Appreciate that.
And it's consistent, I will say it's consistent with what we've outlined in the business plan of how we would go forward.
Our analysts have repeatedly requested that document.
You'll have it today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fong?